started.
All right. Now we're going to start technical session number 26 and an introduction to mobile devices. We did kind of get an intro into it, starting with laptops in the previous one. But this one will get into more of the other types of devices that actually fall under the mobile umbrella. So for the objectives for this particular technical session, we are going to be able to identify mobile devices and explain what qualifies them as a mobile device, describe the characteristics of common mobile devices, including tablets, phones, e-readers, compare and contrast the software platforms, capabilities, accessories, and mobile ports of different mobile devices, and describe the role mobile devices are utilizing currently in today's society. It's almost getting to a point where we can't really imagine a world without them. Although those of us, there are some of us that actually like the world without them sometimes. You don't feel like you constantly have to be connected. All right, adaptability. Seems like new mobile devices are coming out about every couple months. And it's not just phones, it's tablets, it's watches, it's DSLR cameras, e-readers, all sorts of different devices. Constantly having updates and having to learn new ways to interact with them, updated features. And some of these devices are becoming very much multitaskers, even within the mobile arena. And we depend on them more and more with each passing year. The definition that they use specifically for mobile devices with regards to the A+, it is a small portable electronic device that enables computing. And mobile devices have improved in capability, and their use and need for technical support is increased, especially when you see big jumps in the technology within the phones or the tablets, or whenever they have a new operating system come out where they've changed things around a lot. Technical support becomes critical at those particular times because people want to know where to find their files, how do they access it, how do they use the functionality that they've come to depend on so much. And we do typically have three major players with regards to mobile software. The absolute biggest one you have out there with the highest amount of customer buy-in is the Android. I think they take up somewhere along the lines of like 85% of the market. It's some huge chunk of the market. And then you start getting down into the like 10% range, and you're looking at iOS, Apple's mobile operating system, and then Windows is probably about 1% with regards to their mobile devices. Several examples that we can see of mobile devices over time, but a lot of these are merging into singular devices. You have your e-readers, smart cameras, you have your GPSs. When they say smart camera, when they classify it as a mobile device, they're speaking about a DSLR with the actual screen for interaction, where it essentially is a computer. It is not a basically like a regular SLR camera that would use film or something like that. So even though it may be a high-end Nikon still using film, that would not be considered a mobile device, even though it has a lot of bells and whistles and technology on it. They are speaking very specifically about smart cameras with regards to that. Smartphones, wearable technology devices such as the watches, Google Glass was another one. I think they're coming out with another iteration of that. And phablets, which is that fun halfway point between a smartphone and a tablet, which gained popularity probably a few years ago, though it does seem to be kind of moving out of popularity. All right, tablets. Actually, if you weren't aware, who can tell me when the first tablet, when they think the first tablet actually came about?
2000
8.
Take a guess.
2007.
2007,
I said 2008.
2008.
I said
Six.
2000. Yeah,
If we're talking
2007.
about the first iPad, it was
2006.
2010. But I'd
2007
say if we're talking about
iPad.
tablet overall, probably 98.
I'm talking about tablet overall. It's the first iteration of a tablet.
Oh, 90. Yeah, 99. I would say 99.
98, 99.
Yeah.
Any other guesses?
Would the Pilot would count it as a tablet? The Pilot back then?
Pilot?
Yeah, I think it's called Pilot. Yeah.
Wasn't
Palm
something
Pilot?
like,
I'd say that's a PDA.
That's more, yeah, that is a PDA. That is classified
Okay.
as a PDA.
never mind.
So we got what, late 90s is our guess? All right, what if I told you the first tablet actually appeared in the 70s? Couldn't do a whole lot, but they actually had a version of a tablet back in the 70s. Nowadays, they are far more sophisticated than they originally were. I mean, we can use them essentially like a mobile computer or like a computer at this point. They've gotten to be about that powerful for baseline computing for most people. If you could get a keyboard attachment for your tablet, you could pretty much replace your desktop if you're just using it for spreadsheets, word processors, PowerPoints, presentations, various things like that for your job. You're not doing anything real heavy computing. You may only need a tablet. You may not need anything else. But they have built-in cameras so you can do your video chatting if you need to. They have handwriting recognition. GPS is built in. They have their own solid state hard drives built in. Some of them will actually have 3 and 4G mobile support. They got the touch screen and, you know, all these fun new technologies that weren't necessarily available around the time that they were first coming out. Here is essentially the evolution of the tablet. Various different ones that came out throughout the years. I think it was, I thought it was mid 70s. It's actually early 70s. The Dynabook was one of the first iterations of a tablet to actually hit the market. It's very expensive, had very limited functionality. And then Apple had their first version in the late 70s. And then you can see it progressing all the way up to about 2014, where you see the iPad Air 2. So these have become extremely useful and for the most part, computer replacements for the average consumer. Other type that essentially most people feel they cannot live without is their smartphone. Essentially, you know, by all standards, it's essentially a supercomputer in your pocket. Way more powerful than any computer we ever had as a kid growing up. And you essentially have the full knowledge of humanity at the palm of your hand. If you just need to know how to look for it and have a good signal, you can basically find out any piece of information you need to know. And for it to be quantified as a smartphone, we used to have an on-screen keyboard, touch screen, motion sensors, 1 or more SIM cards, and it doesn't necessarily need to have an SD slot for to be classified as a smartphone, but the Android phones tend to have this. That is a big failure of the Apple phones. They love to try to tack on about $200 for any additional memory or something like that. You have to buy the higher versions of their phones rather than being able to upgrade the memory after the fact.
Actually, most flagships have gone away from that model. This way, like
Most
it's a surprise. It's a surprise to get that on an Android phone, expandable storage.
Really?
Most flagship models have moved to internal storage. They all try to do what Apple tries to do.
Yeah, well, the thing, you know, the thing that we, you know, it's always been about them is they're not just, they're rarely the first to market with something, but they tend to make it like smooth out the edges and give a good presentation on something when they're late to the market on it. And their cash model for, you know, their revenue models for their phones, other people are like, yeah, I kind of like that. You know, instead of people allowing people to just go out and buy an SD card, slip it in and upgrade the memory, we can charge them for an upgraded model. So yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look at it from the other side, they said it's also a security measure too.
That is true, because nasty things can be side loaded in through the SD slot if you're not careful, kind of like a USB. So I could see that, but I consider that a little more of a side issue rather than a primary for them. So because you can have security issues just by hooking up to somebody's Wi-Fi. You know, if you're not operating,
Yeah, that's true.
if you don't have a
That's
good
why you gotta have that
VPN,
VPN.
yeah, VPN and, you know, antivirus security, stuff like that. If you don't actually have that stuff active, when you log into somebody else's Wi-Fi, like at Starbucks or McDonald's or whatever, wherever they have the quote unquote free Wi-Fi, you're essentially sitting wide open at that point, and hackers just love hanging out in those. Just gathering up as much information as they can. All right. The evolution of the smartphone. Obviously not fully current. This is, you know, about 3-4 years ago. So you go all the way back to the Gordon Gecko phone here. It's about the size of a cinder block, weighs almost as much. There's a couple of these I actually remember having over the past few years. Remember the Blackberries? They were extremely popular because you had the ability to use email on them. That was a game changer in the industry, up until you got the full touchscreen smartphones, and that essentially started working Blackberry out of the market, up to modern phones that there's a bunch of various iterations you have right now, but unfortunately you're playing in two sandboxes. You either got the Google Android phones or the Apple phones, and more, like I know personally, I am looking to get out of those sandboxes and looking for like a straight Linux phone or something like that, rather than operating off of one of those two particular platforms. So let's see here. Here we go. Wearable technology. This has become a really big thing in like personal fitness, and actually in the medical industry, they're starting to see a lot of benefits in it as well, where you can keep monitoring people's hearts over time rather than just at that moment when they're in the doctor's office. Some of the newer ones, they're pretty bulky though, are actually able to do blood pressure. So you can do blood pressure measures on people, heart rate, GPS tracking, anti-lost alert, which is great for like silver alerts. Anybody knows what that is? Does anybody know what a silver alert is? Okay, you know what an amber alert is? Okay, so when a baby gets lost.
Yes.
So
Is it
along
when
the same lines, what would you think a silver alert is?
when an elderly gets lost?
There you go. When you lose an elderly person. So a lot of times you can put a smartwatch on them, and you can essentially use the Find My Watch function, and you'll be able to track them down quickly and help them, because it can be pretty scary in those situations.
So we have the same situation in my family where one of my uncles got dementia, and he doesn't wear watches, but he always carries his phone.
Yeah.
Which is luckily it's an iPhone. So we
There you
just
go.
find my iPhone all at all times between every family member, because we kind of live close to each other. So anytime it's like, hey, he's out for a walk, everybody watches the phone to see where he walked, and just walked in a circle pattern.
And it gives them the sense of independence, and it gives you a sense of security that if something happens, you'll be able to find them quickly. So that has been a pretty good adaptation with the technology. So yeah, we mentioned the watches. They have heart monitors, GPSs, the Google Glass, which mostly failed because of what they call the creep factor. Basically, everybody walking around like with a camera on all the time. A lot of people did not like that. They don't like being on camera constantly, as well as security issues and stuff like that. People were using them to bootleg movies, all kinds of stuff. So they failed for various reasons. They're trying to come up with a better iteration of it. I think is going to be coming out later this year. There's like 2 companies that are coming out with something similar to the smart glass with the augmented reality built in. Most of them for power cords use the micro USB, as we were talking about earlier. That was one of the most adopted for mobile devices, though they are moving up to the USB-C for increased functionality and power. We went over a lot of this. Body temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, chest straps for more accurate reads on heart. And these are becoming great for, in the medical fields. You have apps where you can store all of this stuff. And then when you go to your doctor, because they have what's called white coat syndrome, like when you go to the doctor, if every time you go there, you have high blood pressure, and then every time you go home, you're fine. A lot of people will stress out when they're going to the doctor, and that stress drives the blood pressure up. So the doctor's only seeing the blood pressure when you're there, and they're going to treat you based on that. This gives you time, to be able to track these things over time and get a more accurate read. And also, there's been several cases with like Apple Watches and stuff like that, where they've been able to diagnose various heart conditions like AFib, murmurs, and things like that based on that long-term use, because it could be intermittent versus, happening constantly. All right. Another place they're kind of sticking them is shoes. You got the Fitbits, but they're actually sticking GPSs in shoes now too. I don't know if any of you ever seen the Under Armour Hover shoe. They actually have a GPS built in that you can Bluetooth to your phone, and it will track your, it's basically a built-in pedometer, tracks where you're going and all that stuff. And then when you get back, if you don't run with your phone, it'll send that information to your phone for you.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
That's kind of cool. Yeah. So, I mean, they're starting to integrate these wearables into more and more things as we go along. All right, here's the Google Glass, which is one that we talked about. Is there, who can think of another augmented reality that was out recently that they're really starting to push now that I think they're starting to change its name. But you were seeing it being used by power companies, drone technology. Yep, Emmanuel got it. The Microsoft Hololens was a self-contained unit. The only real issues with it was field of view was very, very narrow, and battery life. I think the battery life on it was only like an hour and a half or something like that. But they're making big improvements on that. They have a new iteration coming out. Do you know the new name for it, Emmanuel, that they're calling it now? But they've given it a wider field of view. Like you only had about like 20 degrees of view. It was very, very small. But now they're broadening it out to where it's almost like 60 degrees or something like that with each eye. So it's more of a natural view angle. And they've increased the battery life on it and the processing power as well. And they're going to be a real big force, I believe, in the engineering and construction fields coming up. Headsets. We've been using these for quite some time now, being Bluetooth headphones and things like that, and having that direct connection to your phone. You can answer calls. You can talk to Siri or Alexa or Cortana through it, and they offer increased functionality. It may not be perfect, but it's, sometimes it's much quicker and easier than reaching in your pocket for the device and trying to go for it that way. If you could just do a couple taps on the side of your head and get to where you need to be. So in each generation, they try to increase the functionality and ease of use, if not integrating more and more of these devices together. Phablet's pretty straightforward. It's just kind of the middle ground between a tablet and a phone. So it's either a really small tablet or an obnoxiously large phone, however you want to view it. Though, like I said, over the last 3 or 4 years, you've been seeing people use them less and less and less. They don't fit in a pocket easy. You can snap the screens kind of easy on them, and they're expensive to replace. And I believe the another one with popularity are the e-readers, for those of you who don't necessarily need to go out and do the internet and all that fun stuff. You just want a device to keep all your books on and stuff like that. If you're a big reader and you like that, the Kindle Paperwhites and stuff and the Nooks, those are actually very wonderful. They allow for an extremely long battery life because the battery is only being used each time you change the page where it's realigning the pigments. And it's not being used constantly when you're reading it like you would in a device like this here, where it's essentially powered on the whole time. And you only have probably about a couple hours of battery life. On a Kindle, you could probably go for days without charging it and have lots of functional use. So it depends on what your primary use is going to be for it, which one of these you would typically gravitate towards. Smart cameras, we did discuss this a little bit earlier. They're speaking specifically about DSLRs with the screen on the back, point and shoot, or like this one here, or just like an actual DSLR, like a Canon or something like that. They're wonderful for the fact that when you take a picture, it saves all that metadata, including your GPS location of where you took that picture. So later on down the road, if you forget exactly where you were when you took that, you could look it up and be like, oh, I was in Savannah. Excellent. Now I remember where that was. And it'll give you the date and time and everything exactly where you were. If that's not a function you want, you can turn that off. Okay, so they just went with HoloLens 2. I thought they actually changed the name. Thank you for checking on that, Emmanuel. All right, GPS. Global Positioning System, that is the name for it in the US. There are different iterations throughout the world. They utilize satellites to triangulate your exact position. And I believe it is 3 for horizontal triangulation to let you know exactly where you are, longitude and latitude. If you actually can get visibility on a 4th satellite, you can actually tell altitude on top of that. But they're getting kind of creative in their use of GPS systems, because sometimes you may not be able to actually get a signal off of 3, but you can use, essentially, it's like an augmented aid from cell towers. So they know you're pinging off of this cell tower, so you're in this particular area. You can view 2 satellites. So they'll use a combination of that data to actually figure out where you are, what direction you're heading, and they integrate all that so that we can have the GPS tracking on our phones and in our cars if you have it built in. Although standalone GPS devices are also one of those things that are kind of fading away. Typically, people don't buy just a GPS device, either for a car or for a, for walking around. For geo tracking used to be a big thing. But unless you're like in transportation, like trucking, because you would want a really accurate one with updated maps and update your maps, several times, specifically for tractor trailer, then it would be worthwhile for you to buy a GPS. But for the average consumer, not really, because you have one on your phone or they're built into the cars, and you're typically, if you do it, updating the maps maybe once or twice a year or every couple of years, depending on the contracts. Questions so far on that? All right. Common characteristics among mobile devices. They use some sort of LCD panel or OLED panel. Less expensive ones will use twisted pneumatic. More expensive will use in-plane switching for the greater view angle and richer colors as well. Latest phones use OLED, and then almost all of them have some form of touch screen in them. Now, there are two different types of touchscreens. We briefly touched on this before. You have what is called the resistive touch, which is the older technology. And this one was kind of bad because you had to calibrate these things all the time. So whenever you turn it on, you'd have to touch, you'd have to touch up in one corner, then touch down in the other corner, touch in a third corner, and touch it in the center. So it registered where everything was going, and it operates completely off of pressure on the screen. And that's how it's able to tell or write. A lot of the signature pads you see at grocery stores and stuff like that, that is resistive touch. It's going based off of pressure. Now, the newer ones typically use what's called capacitive touch. And it is the most common that is used today. It's using like electrical impulses from your fingers, which is why sometimes when you use gloves, it doesn't recognize you're actually touching the screen. So they made special gloves that would have like small metal filament coming through it so that it can actually tell that there's physical contact on the screen and be able to register what you're clicking on or what you're trying to write. And they don't require constant calibration. And most of the times when you turn them on, they auto calibrate on them. So if you're having an issue with capacitive touch, more often than not, you just do a general restart on it and it will recalibrate itself and go in and fix whatever problems it has, kind of reset itself. Questions so far? It's good to know the difference between these two. They will likely ask you a question based on capacitive and resistive touchscreens. So definitely one to kind of keep in your memory or write, put a star next to it for future reference. Questions so far?
Okay, so you said resistive would be used more for like sensitive stuff, like a drawing pad, like that would be used for that, and then capacitive.
No. Resistive touch is based off of pressure. So your signing pads that you have at like the grocery store, the mall, or banks, whenever you need to sign a document, like on an ATM or something like that, they have that little screen that you're signing on. That's going to typically be a resistive touch. Though some of them are starting to move to capacitive, the bulk of them are still resistive touch, and it's all based off pressure. And the downfall on those is really that the fact that they need to be calibrated constantly so that they register the touches properly. And go ahead. Yeah.
And I'll just give it a thumbs up. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. And then capacitive is the more recent iteration. Those are very, very sensitive so long as you're, like you have your skin and it creates that, electrical connection. So it's registering that. That's why only certain types of pins will work on modern touch screens. And if you wear gloves, it doesn't register it at all because there's no continuity between your skin and the screen. And then when they make those special gloves so that you can actually use your phone with the gloves still on. All right. Common characteristics. Continuing on, most types of mobile devices will have a built-in camera, microphone, and GPS within them. Like we were saying, even with the DSLR cameras, even though a good portion of them don't have microphones, some do, especially with the point and shoot market, but they do have a built-in GPS in them so that that information will be embedded in the metadata of the pictures. So no matter where you upload those pictures, they can say, okay, I know when you took this picture and where you took this picture, and could get a good idea as to, what it is. Like if you can't tell where you were or whatever, you can go back and look at that data and it will tell you exactly when and where this picture was taken, unless you turn those features off. All right. A good portion of them, well, almost all of them have some form of internal storage. with the, I would say with the exception of phones, because they might have internal RAM, but that would have internal memory, but not necessarily internal storage. You would have to actually bring that storage and install it for it to actually function. And obviously not all of them have expandable memory. It's just a general generalization as to what most mobile devices would have. So any questions with regards to internal and expandable memory? What's the difference between memory and storage?
Memory is for short-term application, storage is for long-term hold.
There we go.
Volatile and non-volatile.
There we go.
Good
Excellent.
job.
Quick quiz. Pretty easy, straightforward. Some of them are a little tricky, but mostly just, it's like a true false. Is it or is it not? All right, moving through it. A couple more seconds. All right, we'll quickly go through it. iPhone, mobile or not mobile? Go ahead and take yourselves off mute for a few seconds here.
Mobile.
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 All right. Nikon camera.
Not mobile.
Why?
Cause it don't, well, the versions I think it don't have a screen, interactive screen to it.
Yeah, it didn't specify that it was like a DSLR. Didn't have a screen, so you have to assume at that point it is a regular Nikon camera, so it will not be considered a mobile device. Galaxy tablet.
Mobile.
Mobile. Kindle Fire.
Mobile.
Mobile. PlayStation 4.
Not mobile.
You could probably do some rigging and, you know, put an
I've done some
LCD
rigging.
screen on it.
I've
You
definitely
might
done
be able to-
some.
Do what?
I've definitely done some rigging. It can be mobile.
It can
Wow.
be, but out of the box, it's not mobile. So you can apply some creativity and make it happen. All right, Blackberry Passport.
Mobile.
I know it's an older one.
I put not mobile.
You
I
put
put
not mobile on
just
that one?
'cause BlackBerry, but like I don't know what a passport is. A BlackBerry passport.
Passport was one of
Yeah,
the
right.
one of the later versions of their phones that had the I think was it the Passport, their attempt at the touchscreen. I think that's what it was. I'll double verify it, but yeah, that one is a mobile device.
I think so, if I remember the Passport. I remember seeing it a long time ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, it's not
phone.
a new one, but I
Yes,
think it
it's an older
was
phone.
their attempt at the touchscreen, like they're trying to get into that market.
It's called a Passport because of the size of it. It looks like a passport.
Ah, I gotcha. Apple device. Or
Mobile.
Apple Watch.
Mobile.
Mobile. And as most people don't realize it, but there's several versions of these actually had cellular service on it. You could leave the phone behind completely and have full cell service on the watch if you so chose. iPod Shuffle.
Not
No.
mobile.
Not mobile.
Not mobile. Why? I can carry it with me.
Yeah, but it doesn't have a camera, GPS, none of the commonalities, no screen. It's just a media player.
Ah, all right. Not mobile. iPad without cellular function.
Mobile.
Correct. It is mobile. Even though it doesn't have cell function, it can connect to Wi-Fi wherever you go and has all the other bells and whistles, touchscreen, camera, GPS, all that still functions. Telescope.
Not mobile.
Not mobile. Well, it has, I mean, it has a camera lens on it. I've seen
That
some really
sounds a lot
fancy
better
ones with
than
touchscreens.
I mean, well, what kind of telescope are we talking about? Because there's attachments you could put on your phone, and they're pretty high resolution.
I agree with you, and that's the same. It's the same issue with the camera, with the Nikon camera. If they do not provide any additional information, you have to go with basically what would be the generic form of it. So, generic form of a telescope, couple lenses in a tube. Because they do have some pretty fancy ones that, you know, you can mount on a tripod and they'll auto adjust where they need to go. You can hook them up to your phone or your computer, you know, what have you. And they have a lot of functions. They may be considered a mobile device, but your average telescope, no, not so much. GPS system.
Mobile.
I would agree. It wouldn't be very useful if it wasn't mobile. And I think we're back at the beginning, iPhone. All right. Good job on that one. Got through it pretty good. All right, mobile operating systems. We will get a little more detail into this. I believe we have a tech T session almost strictly on mobile operating systems. But this is the software that would be typically found on your mobile devices, as the devices do not have the computing power typically to handle a full-fledged operating system like you would have on your desktop. They have to have a stripped down version that is far more functional and useful on the mobile devices. You have the three major players in it. Again, Google Android is the big dog in the market with, I think, north of 80%. Coming in second place, you have the iOS, and for the 10 people still holding on to their Microsoft phones, there is that one as well. So, any questions with regards to that? These are considered to be the three big players in the mobile software market. There are others out there. There are some others trying to work up to be rivals to these. Like I said, I'm looking for a really solid Linux-based one myself. And there's a couple players that are going to be coming out with some this year. We'll see how buggy they are when they first come out. So any questions on the three main types of operating systems? All right. Here's some other ones that were out there. You got the Blackberry OS. They stopped even supporting that back in 2013. Symbian earlier than that, 2012. HP Web OS, which was formerly the original Palm Pilot operating system. That one is still kind of hanging on, but I think it has like less than a 1% market share. Bada, which was the Samsung's version of operating system. They terminated that one in 2014. Migo was replaced by Tizen, and then the Linux partners created Tizen, although it has not really been adopted in the mobile phone arena. It's become huge in the tablet, TV, like smart TVs, and in-car operating systems. All right, questions with regards to this? These are just some other players in the market that you may hear the names mentioned from time to time, except for Tizen, which is a up-and-comer. All right. Yes, here's the common devices you would see with these particular platforms. Windows Mobile on the Nokia, Lumia, and Surface strictly. Obviously, iOS is Apple products, so it's going to be on the iPhones and the iPads. And Android has a long list of devices that you'll find their products on. So if it's typically not the Nokia Lumia or an Apple device, you can pretty much guess that it's operating off of the Android operating system. Questions with regards to that? Yep. Moving right through it. All right, various accessories that you can attach to your phone for increased functionality and usage. Some of them you may not think of because we use them so often, like headphones, protective covers, things like that. But even on cell phones and tablets, you can Bluetooth gamepads to them. Some of them can actually attach to the mobile device and give you gamepad functionality on top of that. Docking stations, much like a computer has a docking station, they did have some for laptops where you could actually dock it into a keyboard and use it like that, as well as docking station for it so it can communicate with your computer. However, you charge it or update the data on it. Credit card readers, big player in the market on that is Square. And we looked at a card reader in the last one. They have some that will, connect into the data port of your computer, and it's either a swipe or plug in with the chip, and it can go ahead and read that. Car chargers, stylus pens, all sorts of little gadgets that we can attach for added functionality and convenience. Any questions with regards to that? All right. Back to the connectors and cables that we were talking about earlier. We had the Lightning, which is an 8-pin connector, and it's basically their version of a USB. That's how you would communicate with your computer. You could run updates, data, all that fun stuff through that particular connection, or do it wirelessly if you don't want to dock it straight to your computer. And it also can double as your charging cable for your computer. The Micro and the Mini were the major players for quite some time. First it was the Mini, and then eventually shifted over to the Micro. And then for quite a while, anything outside of Apple, including headphones, pretty much any mobile device was using a micro USB connector for charging and or communication with the device if you were wanting to dock it and update it. Though that is in the current market shifting towards the USB-C because of greater functionality and data transfer speeds. Bluetooth allows for a wireless connection We can go quick trivia question. Where does the name Bluetooth come from? I will be surprised if you know this.
Isn't it two Nord tribes or something like that?
You're right. You're on track. You're on track.
How did you know that, Ashton? This is very random.
Well, it comes from Norway.
Yeah, I know a lot of just random stuff.
I will add to that. I will add to that random memory bank right now. Bluetooth actual translation is Blotvar, and that was the name of a Viking king who had a dead tooth up front, so they nicknamed him Blotvar, which translates to Bluetooth. And he was the first king of the Nordic tribes to unite all of the tribes without using violence. He strictly used diplomacy, and that was a very unique thing in that particular area at that time. So when they came up with a device like this that could communicate a multitude of devices together without conflict, they thought it was pretty good that they would name it after this Viking king, Blotvar. And even the symbol that they use for Bluetooth is the runic symbol for his name. So, little piece of trivia for you. All right. Near field communication, or NFC. It's a short range technology typically used for RFID tags, which is a wonderful technology that we're starting to use more and more. It has some benefits and some pretty big downfalls as well. We can use this for payment systems. We can use it for inventory, security devices. Like if you've ever, whenever you buy a book or something like that, or if you've ever seen the security tags on clothing or something like that, those are RFID devices and are near field communication. So when they come close to a RFID reader, they actually start receiving power from that device, and then it allows them to transmit a signal, and then it's able to be detected. We're also installing it into credit cards, phones, stuff like that, so that it makes payment easier, where you just put the credit card near the reader, it goes ahead and scans your credit card. You can go ahead and pay for your purchase, whatever you're trying to do. But the downfall of that is if somebody has an RFID reader and they get up close to your wallet, they can go ahead and steal your credit card information, which is why you're starting to see a rise in popularity of RFID blocking wallets, stuff like that. But other offices use them for identification cards to get access to secure areas, be it the office building or file storage or server rooms, what have you. So it has a very limited range. You're talking about roughly about 6 inches for near field communication. So it's very, very close for the communication to actually take place. All right. Mobile hotspots. Does anybody have, go ahead, Will.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So just, it's basically like I think you mentioned it's the retail and the clothing store. It looks like an electronic device inside, but it's a sensor.
Yeah,
right?
they'll have like on clothing, you'll see like they'll have like something plastic like clips to the clothing. It's that security tag. When you go up and you buy the piece of clothing, they'll put it on and it'll
go off.
They'll remove it, and then you're good.
Remove.
And something like that. In bookstores, they'll actually have a flat little microchip on a piece of paper that they put in some random page of the book. Wow. And so they'll be able to identify it then, and that'll be kind of deactivated when you go by the cash register or something like that. It's great for security, but it can also be used for inventory. You can put RFID tags on every tower, monitor, electronic device you have in the office, and you don't necessarily have to go behind and read off every tag number of every single device. If you have an RFID reader, you can just go up to it and it's like, boop, okay, I know what that one is. Boop, got that one. Boop, got that one. And it makes your inventory go much faster because you know where everything is, and the reader's picking it up versus you having to manually check it every single time.
Also, it records your inventory in the back. Like, let's say if it's a clothing store, it has
yeah, you can do that for clothing. You could do it for electronic. You can do it for anything.
Interesting. Okay.
So each tag could be unique to the item it's on. So like as you're running down, you got monitor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5's missing, but you got 6. So now you know when you're going to look for missing inventory, you're looking for monitor number 5 and where that one went.
Yeah, I remember that in when I was in college, I had like a job at the mall. I remember there's a loss of prevention guy. He really kept track of that. That was the best way he did it. But so it's mostly for security as well, right? You think?
It has a lot of functions. Security is one of the most common ones that you would interact with as a consumer.
Overseas, you can go to a gas station that's automated fully. You go in, you put your card up to the door, it recognizes that it's you, William. You grab whatever snacks you want. It, as you leave, every snack or drink or whatever has some type of RF tag to it, and it charges the card that opened the door to that gas station. Nobody's there, and you get charged because of the RF and the near field communication and the RF identifier on those devices or on those products.
But RFIDs, yeah, on the cards, that's amazing. But I think Mr. Kelly also mentioned that it could also be a downfall because if somebody else has an RFID.
Well, remember, credit cards can have RFID chips in them too.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a wallet that blocks RFID signals, somebody can come up behind you with an RFID reader, and all they got to do is get within 6 inches of your pocket, and they can snatch that information. They got your credit card, all that fun stuff.
What's it called to prevent that again? You said?
Well, they have RFID blocking wallets. It's like a wallet with a metal mesh weaved into the fabric, and it prevents that signal transfer. It's like a Faraday cage essentially for your wallet.
Nice. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Marvin. Thank you.
Not a problem. All right, hotspots. Now, more frequently, you will see hotspots actually built into cell phones. It's a function that you could, you typically would have to contact your provider and say, hey, I want to have my phone also act as a mobile hotspot, and it can work as other devices that don't have cell service or cell signal can use your device to actually communicate to the internet. But it is a huge tax on your data if you do not have unlimited data. So typically nowadays you will see that built into the actual cell phones, but they actually used to have individual hotspot devices. So like I used to have one for my particular office. Like I actually had it was just a little black box that I carried. I turned it on and it connected to cell service. And if I didn't have any, direct wire connection or Wi-Fi I could operate off of, I can now hook my laptop up and operate from pretty much anywhere. So any questions with regards to other different connection types? All right. Getting close on this one. Kind of as we were talking about earlier, more and more people are using these mobile devices. More and more people are finding it hard to even leave their mobile devices for just an hour or two a day and be disconnected and walk away from it. They need that phone with them each and every day to stay constantly connected. And I think it's over 64% of Americans at this point. I think it's significantly higher now. We're probably in the 70s at this point. This information is 4 years old. So we're probably in the 70s at this point. What was it? About 34% of internet is over the cell phone at this point. I think that's also probably going to be much higher over the last four years. Average person, 4.5 hours a day on a cell phone. And most of that is texting, surfing the web and stuff like that, not just talking on the phone. We've come a long way with that. Interestingly, when I was getting my cell service hooked up for the first smartphone I bought, it was required you have unlimited data, but they would not give you unlimited talk or text. You were required to have unlimited data. And because you're required to have it, they charged you $10 a month for data. Unlimited. that'd be a great deal nowadays. And thankfully with that particular provider, so long as you didn't change the contract, that remained the same. So I actually have never changed that contract, both myself and my wife, and I have unlimited data for like $10 a month. And so long as we don't change it, it's good. But nowadays, what do they max you out at? About 10 gigs a month? Sometimes 20.
Got unlimited. I hopped on that bandwagon too.
You what?
I said I got unlimited. I hopped on that bandwagon too.
Yeah. But I think some of the providers are starting to get a little better with the unlimited data. They're starting to bring down the cost for unlimited to a more manageable level. I think Mint is one that you were mentioning, Marvin. Was that the one you were talking about? I think it's
Tell me,
gonna
say
be-
that one more time. I walked away.
No problem. Like unlimited data, the unlimited data stuff, there's starting to be more competition and the prices are starting to come down. Was it the one you were telling me about? Was that Mint?
There's several places. You got to keep in mind, you have, of course, like those people that are using the major towers, like Straight Talk with AT&T and things of that nature. I have 3 gigs with rollover, Kelly,
Okay.
and I will not let it go because since I work from home, that rollover has put me at like 17 gigs. And I don't think, so I'm in a safe zone as long as I stay in the house. But it's one of those things. I wish I would have not fought that unlimited data plan when it first came out. But
Yeah.
of course, Kelly, now he buys his phones directly straight out. He just paid a full brunt so they don't touch his contract. Because if you turn in your phone to get like a upgrade or something, they're gonna switch your plan up. So you gotta be careful.
We only buy the phones outright. We do not, I don't, like we can make a payment. No, I don't want to know. No, just give me the phone. Maintain that data because with Comcast internet being sketchy as it is,
very.
Some days I have a decent connection. Some days I have absolutely horrid connection. I can jump over onto my cell data. And I think I average about 25 gigs a month or something like that. It's not insignificant.
I have noticed that like Yahoo has their own mobile now. It's like a lot of different companies are jumping into the service. So you can sign your phone up through Yahoo Mobile and pay whatever price that is. So
yeah, I got you. But now your home internet providers have jumped on that bandwagon. Like, hey, we can just charge for data. So they cap everybody out at a terabyte. If you stream high def video, you can chew through that terabyte really fast, especially if it's 4K.
Agreed.
You can chew through that data in no time flat. So, and it didn't used to be the case. You used to have unlimited data with your home provider. All right. Here's a rough breakdown, just kind of, for your information, how do people, break up their time? How do they use their mobile devices? 41% coordinate meetings or get-togethers. Some people use it to find out information, to help settle arguments, decide whether to visit a business, getting reviews, traffic updates, all kinds of fun stuff. But just various people use it for different reasons or different amounts of time using different things. So hopefully during this particular T session, you got an idea how to identify a mobile device and explain what exactly qualifies it as a mobile device. Describe the characteristics of common mobile devices, including tablets, e-readers, phones, watches, GPS. We know that telescopes aren't a mobile device anymore. I'm a little brokenhearted about that one, but I guess I'll have to move on. Compare and contrast software platforms, capabilities, accessories, and mobile ports for different mobile devices. And describe the role that mobile devices take in today's society. Do we have any questions so far with regards to mobile devices? All right.
Professor, yes, can you just go back again, the benefits of, I know Mr. Marvin just mentioning that there's a lot of companies that are already doing mobile devices, mobile services. So you're saying that it's ideal to just go ahead and not just buy the brand new phone entirely? Like if I get the new
Or-
iPhone that's coming up, I just
It
buy it
depends.
cash
I
pocket?
mean, most of the answer, I mean, unfortunately, I hate to say that, but almost all the questions you ask is going to fall under the "it depends" category because of personal preference. You know,
Okay,
for me personally, I don't like having payments because, you know, typically included with payments is interest, and I don't want to pay interest. And if I'm going to have a mobile phone, I'm going to hold on to it as long as possible. Up until about a month ago, I had a phone that was older than my oldest child. It still worked. It still operated great. It functioned until the day it didn't. And the day it didn't is when I went and bought a new one. So I'm going to hold on to that phone for a long period of time. So it makes sense for me to go ahead and just pay that money outright in cash and be done with it. I'm not paying any extra, no interest, none of that. I have it outright. I own it. If you're an early adopter, and you like having the latest, the greatest, the most up to date and fanciest phone that's on the market, that's probably not going to be the best call for you. You're going to want to lease it because you're going to have it for maybe a year, year and a half, and then you're going to upgrade to the next phone.
Right.
So it's going to really depend on your personality, how long you're going to hold on to that phone, what you're going to use it for, and what you prefer, whether or not just buying it outright is a better deal for you. It's kind of like cars. If you're only going to have a car for about 2 or 3 years, you know, because you like keeping up with the newer vehicles, you don't like to deal with the long-term maintenance, don't want to deal with, you know, as the car's getting, you know, worn out and stuff like that, you know, maybe you deal with a lot of clients for your business. So you need to have a nice, you know, up-to-date vehicle. A lease would be a much better option for you. If you're the kind of person who are going to drive that sucker till the wheels fall off and you're just going to keep up with the maintenance, go ahead and pay cash up front, get it, and then you keep up with the maintenance that way. You end up paying less in the long run. So it's personal preference how you're going to use it.
I understand now. I understand. I figured I like to know this stuff so that way maybe I come across a lot of different clients. They're gonna have different perspectives and preferences. So this helps a lot. Thank you.
Not a problem. All right. Any other questions?